Welcome to the Biz Bash podcast, where we make biz strategy a piece of cake. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Cami, but you might know us better as Eliza Ann Calligraphy and Cami Monet. We want to help you, our fellow stationers, artists, and calligraphers, confidently build a profitable and personality-driven creative biz.
We're here to share our honest-to-goodness advice and actionable strategies for ambitious artists.
So put on your party hat, quit being a procrastinator gator, and let's get this party started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Biz Birthday Bash podcast. It is Elizabeth again today. Cami is still on maternity leave at the time that we are recording this. So even though this episode is going to be coming out sometime in late May, Cami is not here for the recording. But I have an amazing guest here today. She is the second person in the history of our podcast to return for a follow-up episode. So it is Katie of Hosanna Revival with us today. Hello, Katie. It is so great to have you back.
I'm honored to be back for the second edition.
Yes. So much to talk about since we have last spoken in the fall of 2019. But for people who aren't familiar with Katie, I am going to read her bio really quick, and then we'll get into it because we have a lot of great questions for her today. So, Katie has had one mission in mind since launching her creative brand over 6 years ago: excite women to engage in scripture by creating beautiful and intentional tools for their lives. By paving the way in the market for beautiful Bibles and other faith-based tools, Hosanna Revival has become a well-known Christian brand among young women. As the brand has grown, Katie is so honored to continue providing truth and encouragement to the Hosanna Revival community through beautiful tools and their social media community. So, I love the little snippet. There's so much that has changed and grown since we've talked. So let's start right off the bat with what are the biggest things that have changed for Hosanna Revival since we last aired an episode, which was the fall of 2019.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun to reflect on because truly so much has changed,
including a pandemic.
Oh my gosh, right? We had no idea what was coming at that point.
Nope.
Yeah, so we have always created beautiful Bibles, and then other faith-based paper goods is how we like to put it. And so that, requires warehousing, and we've got a small team, and kind of all the tasks of small business at that point in 2019 were divvied up, I think, between 5 of us. Our team wasn't very big. I'll have to double check that. But
that sounds about right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we had our office and our warehouse in one building, and we were just working hard and trying to make things happen back then. But since then, we have since bought a new building, and we moved our whole shipping operation and our office. It was actually just right across the street, but we got a building that was 3 times the size as the one we were renting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we renovated that, and we're now fully in that building. It's been just over a year since we closed on that, and we closed March 2021. So that has been so exciting.
Yeah, that's huge. Okay, so you guys went from renting to buying. So
Yes.
The thought process behind that when you evaluated everything, tell us why that made sense for you guys.
So we are in a really unique area in Cincinnati, Ohio, where we live. Lockland is this tiny little, technically a village, and it's just kind of a ghost town. So we had really cheap rent where we were, so that it wasn't actually a cost issue, but a building. We needed more warehouse space. Mm-hmm. So we had enough office space where we were, but we were getting so much product in. We had racking 30 feet into the air in this old warehouse. And it still wasn't
I remember
enough.
that one.
Yeah,
I think I saw that one.
Right at the cusp when we were in trouble. And so we were desperate. We knew we had a big delivery coming later in that year. And so a building came up for sale across the street. And then when we saw what mortgage would be compared to renting, just kind of like people that are going from renting apartments to buying homes. It's
yep.
Wait a minute. So we decided to make the call to buy because the costs came out pretty similarly, and we knew a renovation would be a big financial hit. But creative space for creatives, I think, is so important in our team. All the designers on our team and just the culture we're trying to build, it felt like if we could create a beautiful space, that would serve us well, especially when it comes to employee retention and company culture. And so anyway, it was a big dream of ours to have a space that matched kind of the beauty of the products we created, because we really were in like a dumpy warehouse before. So this was a massive jump for us.
Yeah, definitely huge. And I'm so glad that you used the term mortgage because for some reason in my mind, like buying a commercial building is like, I forgot that, like, of course, you would have a similar, like,
Yeah.
mortgage monthly payment. It's not like you have to pay it all at once, but I think,
Right.
I think I get like tripped up in my mind thinking for some reason, like, oh, with the, like, with the business purchase, like, that is the case, but you can do something really similar. And so that makes sense. Like, once you guys crunched the numbers, that worked out well. And then, well, technically, that's some potential like equity in the business then because you guys are sitting
Yeah.
on a building and property.
No, that's exactly right. And it's been really cool for us. And we've been able to use this space in different ways that we weren't able to do with our rented space. We've got different like Bible studies in the community that use our space on nights when we're not here. We've hosted our own parties here, like for the team and everything. And it's been really awesome.
That is so cool. Do you guys have pictures of it up online anywhere? I can't remember.
Oh
I don't
man.
because I don't know if I've seen anything.
We didn't ever do like a tour, but I think I think we should. It's, like in the back of some of our like video content, you'll see
Uh-huh.
like just little shots of it, but we never did a like walk with us through our new renovation because it was kind of
Yeah.
a rolling renovation for a while. Like we were fully moved in for like 4 or 5 months before our kitchen cabinets came. So
Yes. Well, and of course
it
it's like
was
kitchen
crazy.
cabinets were delayed throughout the entire country
Yes.
anyways. And so like even our neighbors, when they did their kitchen remodel, were waiting on kitchen cabinets. So that makes
Jeez.
sense. And you have to make use of the space as well as you can while completing some of like the finishing touches and the updates for everything. So you guys got in there last March, but then you wouldn't have wrapped things up like on the design side until late summer, maybe?
Yeah, so I think this is so funny because it parallels our story when we moved out of my apartment into that first warehouse. We had a shipment coming and we're like, oh crap, if this gets delivered, we have nowhere to put it. So sure enough, we closed on this building, and then a delivery came a couple days later. So we had product in the warehouse, but we didn't move in for another maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. And then we worked out of kind of an undone office for months. So I think
Mhm.
we were officially in and like felt very good about it by June.
Okay. That's awesome. So let's jump into some of the more like technical questions then, now that we have a good kind of frame of reference for people listening on when you got this new space and what some of that has looked like. But I would love for you to share some of the challenges that you've had when it comes to keeping inventory sorted, especially as your obviously your product line grows, the amount that you have grows, and then processing shipments. I don't know, kind of like all the warehouse things, but let's start off with the challenges of inventory like as you grow to this scale and what you guys have done to help keep yourselves organized.
Yeah. So for those listening, our size is interesting because we probably have like 120 SKUs of different products. So we're not like giant, and a lot of those are stickers. So those are like little, and if you sell small things, you don't need a big warehouse. But when it comes to Bibles, 1,000 Bibles is for us is the size of like one whole pallet. So 4x4 at the base, and then up to like 5, sometimes 6 feet tall. So our product is just huge. So our warehouse is
Mhm.
like pretty overwhelming once we've got that many SKUs. And then 1,000 of a product for us is a normal, like minimum number. So we're not like Costco sized of a business. We're still definitely a small business working in constraints of a still small space. But that warehouse it's big enough to be inconvenient to not have things sorted well.
Yeah.
When we were
Yep.
when we were in like one room, it was fine. You could just look around and eventually see it. But now that you have to walk all the way across a warehouse, you just waste a bunch of time if you can't find what you need. And our racking now is 4 levels high, so you need to roll over the ladders and the forklifts and everything. And if it's not sorted well, you really do waste a lot of time. So
Yeah.
for us, that looks like we ended up doing like a big overhaul of the way we had sorted things. And the need for that was for our shipping staff. They can now look on a door and search, the product name as they walk into the warehouse. And, it's in A3 and they know exactly where A3 is and they can go right to it and get what they need. but we also do a monthly inventory. And that's something we have. It's so tempting to skip um, because it's
Yeah.
like, we're fine, or we don't have to count everything. It's such like a tedious task. But as we've gotten bigger, we've gotten in trouble a few times when our inventory didn't match what we thought we had. And so, yeah, keeping inventory super important to us. And so we also aren't big enough yet to have everything with like a barcode. So we don't, it's not automatic. We can't just scan a pallet and know how many things are there. We're still manually counting things, but we prioritize it because we think it's worth it.
Yeah. You'll have to ask Cami at some point what it was like when she kind of transferred to using SKUs for her business, barcodes for the SKUs, because I know that was kind of a whole thing. And we want to do like a separate episode on it, to be honest, because there are so many like nuances. And she said there was just no resources, anything to like help her kind of stumble through that, basically.
Okay.
The idea of adding barcodes to things and all of that. So yes, when you're counting things by hand, it gets even more more like crazy to keep track of everything. So that's great to hear, though, that you kind of have everything's zoned out. Who was the first person on your team to get trained, like certified to use the forklift? I know you have to have lessons, right, for that or something.
So we're also still sitting in the in-between on that. So we have a fork that you don't sit in, you like walk behind. So you don't have to be certified to use that kind, which is awesome. So yeah, you stand behind it and push it, kind of like a pushing lawnmower, but it is still like, automatic and obviously can lift things over 30 feet in the air. But the height that ours goes to is the max height. Like the max height of the fork is as high as we need it. So we are like right on the edge of having to get certifications and safety training and moving into that area.
Yeah, doing all that fun stuff. When I think of like a warehouse, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is the office and just like their warehouse. And I don't know, I can never get the scene out of my head where like Michael knocks all the shelves over and there's stuff everywhere. And so, yeah, there's so many different moving parts. So now you said you have a team, like a dedicated team for shipping. I know that you had a couple people doing shipping or completing orders before, but how much has the shipping team itself grown at this point?
Oh my gosh, so much.
Yeah.
So much. So going way back in time, obviously small business, when you're an entrepreneur, you start doing every little thing. So I was shipping in the very beginning, but that was actually the first employee I hired, was someone to help me ship. So from there, we have transferred leadership twice. And then just this last year, we actually hired my dad to manage our shipping operation. So he left his like long-term corporate career to come manage this for us. And it has been so awesome. So he runs the show. He leads a team of about like 15 college girls that rotate in and out, depending on semesters. But they have a ton of fun down there. So he heads that up and it's been really cool.
Yeah, I would hire my dad in a heartbeat to do something like that. So I love.
Dads are good at that stuff.
So good. And my dad has like a lot of past warehouse experience, because I might have told you this when we met in person, because you got to meet my mom and my sister. That my dad used to run a toy company back in the day with his like best friend. And so they went through the whole like warehouse thing too. And I would go when I was a kid to help them pack stuff. And that was just always the highlight. I have the best memories from being able to do that. And so if you can create like the right kind of culture in that environment, it can be really fun instead of dull.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And we always try and compare, like when we were doing the renovation, even we're like, okay, are we going to like design the warehouse and make it like beautiful? And we tried to ride the line of like, okay, it's still a warehouse. It's still a warehouse job, but we want the experience of all employees to be positive, so we always try and be like brighter than an Amazon warehouse. Like we're going to give people breaks and let them have snacks, like a better experience than a typical warehouse. But still, it's still hard work. Warehouse and distribution is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, definitely not. Okay, so one of the big questions I have, and especially for people listening who, they want to scale their team, they kind of want to grow their business. One of the most important things we can do is start creating processes from the get-go, specific ways of doing something and doing it consistently every time. So anyone who's new to the business who comes in is going to learn that same process and be implemented into just the culture of the business and the how-tos and all of that. So can you walk us through like what happens when you guys get a brand new shipment into the warehouse? What are the steps you guys have to take to count it, to sort it, to get it into the right place and all of that?
And it's always a big day. We actually have product arriving Monday, so we're gearing up for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so tempting again too. Like when shipments are delayed in these COVID times, we're waiting, and oftentimes we've pushed a launch for it. So it's so tempting to get it off the truck and just start selling it, but you
Mhm.
have to sort it, you have to count it. And then oftentimes printers like they don't send you surprise, they don't send you the exact number you ordered. You want 1,000 of something and they're like, well, there's 960, like
And
or
you're like, yeah,
1,000.
that's 40 is a lot to leave off.
I know. And typically though, like they charge you for what they send you. But that very first time we had budgeted for 1,000 Bibles and they sent us 1,180. And I'm like, I don't have the money for the extra 1,180,
Right.
so it's just interesting. But when a press is hot, they're going to like print until they use their materials. It's a very unique thing about manufacturing overseas.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so you got to count it. You got to get it off the truck. That's something we had to learn the hard way, like multiple times, is like, okay, if you don't have a loading dock, like a truck, you're going to have to manually unload it, like jump up
Mhm.
in the truck and hand it down. But at this point, we do have a loading dock. So the truck shows up and we can drive our little like forks and manual forks into the truck and pull them off. Something else we've learned the hard way is they don't always load them in the truck in a way that you can just stick your fork in and pull them out. Sometimes they're backwards, sometimes they're double stacked. Even though we tell our manufacturer, do not double stack. We can't get these off. We don't have the machinery for getting them off if they're
Yeah.
double stacked. But yeah, that kind of stuff happens all the time. There's just a lot of miscommunication from when a product leaves the factory to by the time it gets to us. So
Mhm.
delivery day is always a big deal and everybody gets a little sweaty. We take everybody from upstairs downstairs sometimes when we need it to help unload stuff and get
Yeah.
it where it needs to be.
Yeah, and not to mention like the process of sorting then and setting aside any Bibles or journals that aren't going to be sold full price. Because I remember that was kind of one of those things when I was at your smaller warehouse in person, was still kind of like a shock almost when I saw the
Mm.
pile that you guys had set aside for, even though that they are still usable, they're not going to be sold at full price because you guys occasionally will do a sale, I think, for stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
process of sorting through that alone has to take quite some time.
Well, okay, that is true. And we, at this point, if we see a pallet that is obviously damaged, like it looks like it got, run over, we'll open that up because we need to document it right away because we would recoup some cost from the shipping company. So
Okay.
not for manufacturing, but if it was damaged in transit, we have to
Okay.
photograph that really well and show that, like your guy rammed this into who knows what,
Mhm.
and we need money back for loss of income. But then what we do now for manufacturing errors is our shipping staff is trained to spot those errors. So they give the
Okay.
product a quick inspect as they're ready to ship it. So that eliminated a good step of us not sorting through things right away, and putting that onto them as they're about to package an order. And you're right, we do have a spot where they just stack up the amount of stuff that's not fit for sale.
Mhm. That's so smart though, instead of making it a separate step. Like what
Mm-hmm.
work smarter, not harder, and to have those
Yes.
kind of like bundled into one solution makes a lot of sense, to be honest. And then sorting out those pallets that have errors or things that happen. So it's crazy that, so much of your product is coming overseas, as a lot of our product
Yeah.
in this country does. I recently heard of a woman's book. I don't know if you've heard of Kendra Adachi. She does The Lazy Genius.
Okay.
She was releasing her new book, and I think a third of it was lost because of this bad storm on a boat. I couldn't believe it.
Oh
She
my
was like
gosh.
talking about that on her
Nightmare.
podcast, that like a third of the books, the guys are like at the bottom of the ocean. So have
Truly.
you guys
Oh,
ever
that's
had,
such a nightmare.
yeah, nothing to like to that extent, but it can be so nerve-wracking bringing something overseas or manufacturing elsewhere, getting things in on a boat, going through that entire process. So I guess what were like the biggest What are the biggest things that you have learned after transferring to that type of business model? Like, I know this isn't exactly a question I had written down, but any like wisdom to impart on people who want to go that direction?
Yeah, man. Well, my first note is that it's hard as heck. Like it is
Yeah.
so just such uncharted territory for especially for anybody that is not coming from the logistics industry. I imagine if
Yes.
someone worked in logistics before starting their small creative business, they would have a massive leg up. Because it's not something you can Google. You can't say. Whereas most things these days, you can find resources on how to do something. People ask us all the time, like, how did you even find your overseas manufacturers? And it truly, like the luck of the draw. Like we met some guy at some trade show who happened to connect us, but I really don't know if we didn't meet him, how we would have found somebody. Because you
Mhm.
can't just Google like Bible factory in China. Like
Yeah,
you
no,
won't
it
find
doesn't
anything.
happen.
Like
It's stepping stone after stepping stone
right.
after back door and like
Hmm.
a mixture of all sorts of funny things, fate, God, whatever whatever
Right.
it may be that makes the stars aligned, and it's not an easy answer.
No, you're exactly right. So I do think at this point, my husband Nick spends like his entire 40-hour week on managing our manufacturing relationships and our freight forwarding to get our Bibles here afterwards. So it is a lot of work. And so that is like maybe a piece of wisdom is just over budgeting time and stress and strife for that area of your business
Mhm.
if you are trying to move to any kind of overseas production. I think if it's your first time, like finding someone and asking if there's an American rep that you can speak with, because we didn't know for like over a year that the company we were working with actually had someone stateside we could have been calling and getting help for our stuff.
That would have
And we're,
helped a lot.
yeah, we're like trying to use like WhatsApp Translate to talk to our Chinese partners, and so if you can find a company that has a U.S. rep, you will be very, very grateful. For one thing, the time zone, like you don't have to
Yes, I
wait
was gonna
till
say the time change
midnight.
alone without the language barrier would be
Yes.
difficult.
Right. And they can just shine a lot of light and clarity on the processes. And then also knowing too, every time we have shifted manufacturers, we have like maybe 3 or 4 different people that we work with overseas, and their processes are all so different. So for Nick, he has to like memorize the way they like their files exported or folders for uploading and who they're going to use to ship it to us afterwards. Like it is, there's just, of course, they have different ways of doing things, and we'd be silly, and we were silly to assume that they all would take our files the way we wanted to export them.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's been a huge learning curve. I would say the last thing is then that transition from factory to shipping. So the factory is not responsible for getting the stuff to you. You are. So that's
Okay.
a whole nother thing to learn. But thankfully, those freight forwarders are stateside. So you'll have a lot easier time Googling that and doing that. But the freight industry is the one that is worst off out of all areas of our business these days, post pandemic. Just to put some numbers to how horrible things have been. We used to be able to pay about $1,000 per pallet to get stuff over to us. So if we were, from start to finish, so to get it
Mhm.
from our factory onto a boat, and then in the US onto a train, and then from the train to a truck to our warehouse. So
Mhm.
all of that was $1,000 per pallet. So we could estimate, if this is a 20 pallet order, we know what we're going to spend. But at this point in COVID, everything literally tripled. So it went from 1,000 to 3,000 per pallet, which was
Wow.
huge. And then now, just in this last year, it has doubled again. So, and everyone's saying, don't expect it to get any better. So it's a huge burden for all businesses, small businesses in particular, because you just eat that margin. If you don't want to increase your costs for your customers, it's like at some
Mhm.
point we're going to have to, because we've now added like $10 of unit cost onto each product and haven't yet raised our prices. So
Yeah.
it's gonna hurt, So
Yeah. It
that's kind of
I get it. And yeah, it's something that has to be done. I had
mhm.
looked into potentially like bringing some of my wax seal designs like back in house
Oh
and
yeah.
doing product here, and just the conversation of like shipping some small boxes like
Mm.
not necessarily a pallet worth of product, just some boxes, and that was like $1,000, and I was like, this doesn't make sense financially for me
Yeah.
to do this. It makes more sense for me to stick with the partnership of what I had before. And that
Man.
can be really tough. And so tell me too, because when you guys started printing Bibles at the beginning, did you partner with Random House, or there was some sort of publisher you had partnered with at the time? But are you still
Yes.
doing that, or are you in charge of like your own publications? Because I saw something about you guys opening your own publication line, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. So in the beginning, our partnership was with Crossway,
Yes,
and we
thank
still
you.
do work with them. So they own the rights to the ESV translation of the Bible because they wrote it. So
Yep.
they
Okay.
they have the rights to print it, and nobody else does, which makes a ton of sense. So that's something that has changed a lot for us in the last few years. Is just asking for and receiving. Reproduction rights for different translations of the Bible. So what that looks like is, when we've been printing with Crossway in the past, we're not allowed to change anything about the interior because they have the rights and they did not license it to us. But with some other translations like the CSB and the NLT, we are allowed to print those because we've got awesome agreements with those publishers, and that
Okay.
means we were able to add our own design to the interior as well. So we could add a tiny little leaf, above Romans in the Bible.
Okay.
So that was a really great move for us. And yeah, that goes hand in hand with what you were mentioning you saw of us being able to also publish authors' written work. So that's a huge kind of area Hosanna's moving into these days, is producing like book content and publishing authors.
Yeah, so cool. Like, I think we could do another podcast alone on all of that and everything that goes into that.
Yeah.
But I at least wanted to like weave it in and ask a little bit about that because I was curious about it. But we'll stick with kind of continuing to ask some of the like the product and the operation
Okay.
side of
Yeah.
things. So tracking back a little bit to like warehouse operations and shipping, we know now that your husband's in charge of talking through all the with the manufacturing partners, shipping, and your dad is running the physical shipping happening in the
Mm-hmm.
warehouse. So, have you guys been able to negotiate special pricing with UPS or FedEx or whoever it is that you're using to ship? Because I've heard that companies at a certain point can do that, but I didn't know like the environment of what that looks like, especially with how everything has gone up due to the pandemic anyway. But it was something I wanted to ask.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. And that's awesome. I feel like that was a big kind of turning point for me. I think I just assumed when I was first starting that USPS was the way to go because I don't know, it's free to get the free packages and small business owners are excited about it. And I just assumed UPS and FedEx were out of reach in price point.
Mhm.
So that was awesome to learn that, like, okay, wait, they will actually negotiate with you and get those prices down to something more manageable. So what I've learned is they have sales reps whose job it is to get new accounts. So those sales reps will kind of wine and dine you and try and serve you as best as they can. So we were able to have reps coming in constantly and pitching us on like, hey, I can get you this rate, this much per package or for this size that you typically ship if you can ship this many per month. So we're saying like, oh, actually, we only see, 1,000 packages go out per week or something like that, and get that number down. And of course, when we were first meeting with them, that number was way, way lower.
Mhm.
But yeah, they have tiers that they're able to pitch you on and say like, okay, yeah, if you're only shipping out 100 per week, here's the rate I can offer you. But in my understanding, they have a deal for almost everybody. So
Yeah.
if you are still only shipping USPS, call up a local rep and they'll bring you Chick-fil-A and give you your best pitch.
Yeah, no, I think that is a great insight for people who maybe didn't understand that was something you could do. Because
Yeah.
once again, I do remember that my dad randomly brought that up. It is so funny what you hold on to from being
Yes.
so young. I was just like a kid at the time that he had talked about that. But
Totally.
it's pretty cool that there is a way to be able to do that and that it could be applicable for almost
Yeah,
anyone. So
small. Well, and too, they'll like lock in rates for you for different seasons too. Like I remember at some point being like, okay, we don't ship that many now, but Christmas season will totally hit that number. And they were able to offer us those rates for like just the month of Christmas season. So be best
okay.
friends with your rep.
Yeah, I know exactly. Having those working relationships is super
Yes.
important. Do you know, you might not know like the number off the top of your head, but what do you guys think you are shipping out per day? Like how many packages are going out each day?
You know what? I don't know off the top of my head. I do think the 1,000 number a week is probably about right, because I know it's probably like 800 from our website, and then our wholesale packages, like they hold a lot more product, but
Yeah.
I think I'm sticking with my story, 1,000.
Yeah. That sounds about right. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like even more. And you
I
just
know. You're
don't
right.
even like realize it at this point, because that's not, you're not in charge of it anymore,
I
which is
know.
really nice to kind of have that.
It's beautiful to not
A little
know.
bit of like relief. Somebody else that's their expertise and they're taking care of all of it, and it's
Mhm.
all still happening, and it's a good feeling. Hey guys, we just wanted to hop in and talk about one of our amazing resources, the A to Z directory. All of us have thought at some point, how did she do that, or how did she make that? And maybe you don't know where to start or how the heck to produce this amazing product you've dreamt up.
Well, the A to Z directory is the missing puzzle piece in your biz, you guys, seriously. So it's built in the form of a yearly membership, and it's your one-stop shop for finding suppliers and vendors for all the things. Literally where to print everything from custom invitations, greeting cards, mugs, koozies, acrylic printing, letterpress, custom ribbon. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And it literally goes from A to Z. From acrylic printers to zipper pouches, we have it in the A to Z directory.
We want to help all of you search less and create more with this list of 300 plus vendors and suppliers. Don't worry, they're very organized. It's not going to be overwhelming and confusing when you join. And this membership also includes access to a private Facebook community. It's incredibly active and involved. And if you need a question answered fast, that is definitely the place to go.
Yeah, our Facebook group really is the best, you guys. Everyone is so helpful in there. And we're in there too, answering questions you guys might have. So it's a great way to get access to us and ask us things without sliding into our DMs. So we're more likely to answer you in the Facebook group, just saying. Anyway, also in the Facebook group, this is new for 2020 and we're really excited about it. We are hosting monthly Power Hour Q&A sessions that are live, and these are only available to our A to Z directory members. So you can hop in with us live and ask us all your burning questions in real time and just hang out with us every month. And we do these at different times so you can actually be there live, and the replays are always available in the Facebook group for members.
This resource is priced at $147 a year, which honestly is extremely affordable and is full of so many benefits, such as exclusive vendor coupons for members only. And we would love to have you guys join. Seriously, it's kind of like our family and our tribe. So visit bizbirthdaybash.com/directory to sign up today and use coupon code podcast2020 to receive $20 off your first year. That's podcast, all caps, 2020 for $20 off your first year.
We can't wait to see you in the Facebook group.
Okay, let's see. Let's transfer into talking a little bit about, we'll switch back to like the planning product side, because we had talked about kind of like shipping and getting it here and what it looks like. But because of that whole process and how long it takes, how far in advance do you have to start planning new products and Bibles that you want to introduce to your product line?
Oh my gosh, so far in advance. So the goal that we're working towards now is to be sending a product to print 1 year before its launch date, which is absurd. Because in the beginning, I could send something to print like 3 months before launch date, which felt manageable. So we wanted to get more ahead just to be more ahead, because that felt like something we should be doing. Back in the day. So we would try and be like, okay, we sent it 3 months before, let's try 4. And so we were trying to get more and more ahead. And I think when COVID hit, we were sending stuff to print like maybe 6 or 7 months before we needed it. And then product all arrived like 3 months late because of COVID. So we're like, oh no, we have to build in more and more buffer. So yeah, at this point, we are now at like 11 months before print, and we're trying to get to 12.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What does that? Yeah. How? Because I'm like trying to wrap my head around even, planning that far out. So it's like I'm just assuming like your meetings within Hosanna Revival, it's like the collection that you guys are talking about at the time. Just you guys know that it'll be like March 2023 or whatever.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, as designers, it's been really challenging thinking about like predicting trends and
Yeah,
everything and
that's so
trying to like
hard. It changes
drive the
so
market.
fast.
It does. But what we're finding now, honestly, when we were working at like, I don't know, like the 6 to 8 month range, we were in the wrong season. So I'd be designing for winter when I was all excited to be buying bathing suits, And so now working a year in advance, I'm at least like in the Christmas spirit when I'm designing for next Christmas, which is kind of helpful.
Yeah, definitely helpful because I know that is a struggle that Cammie's talked about before. She's like, I just can't, like, how am I supposed to paint Christmas in July?
How do I get there mentally?
Yeah, so just like planning, okay, like I'm planning like the 2023 spring collection in spring of 2022.
Yeah.
And then you don't feel as misaligned with the holidays, and it lets you enjoy that season probably a little bit more, especially around the holidays when all of that comes around. So okay, so many good questions. They're a little bit like all over the place, but I think
You're
they're all
fine. I'm loving
important.
it.
Okay, good. Okay, let's talk next about what people need to keep in mind when scaling their business and growing a team to this size. So obviously that your team has like probably quadrupled since we last spoke.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about like maybe HR policies or employee handbooks or what you guys realized you needed in place now that the team is at the size that it is.
Man, I am glad you asked because I'm super passionate about this.
Yay!
I talk a lot about like, I'll say often like management is for sure the hardest part of small business growth because you're good at whatever you were good at when you started the business, whether that was your trade or your skill. And then learning to manage is like, again, not second nature for most people. So that's been very hard. And becoming an HR rep is something I never thought I would do. I thought I'd be an artist and a marketer. And yeah, so I think you kind of said it earlier, but prioritizing processes is absolutely the most important thing you can be doing now. Building that firm foundation in doing things that you don't think make sense for a small team or seem like a waste of time. Like if you plan to grow, like for example, like if you only have 3 employees and none of them are pregnant or thinking about it, write your maternity leave policy now. Because the second someone is pregnant, then it's all of a sudden it's personal. Now you're writing it for them and you're not able to think clearly and you are not able to like not offend them. If like you only, if you're giving 8 weeks, they're like, well, she obviously doesn't care about me or she would have given me 10, like whatever it is. So make these policies now before you have the people to fill them because you can always amend them. But it's way easier to say like, hey, so-and-so, this was our starting point. So I'm going to increase this maternity leave policy to 12 weeks because I do think that fits our needs better now, but you got to do it before the people are asking for it because the second the people are there, it's personal.
Yeah.
And that's what's so hard about HR in a small business is in a big business, the man is just upstairs and people have somebody to be mad at and they'll never see him. But when it's a small business, they're mad at you, and like these friends and close employees, like you are the one delivering bad news. And it's just really tough to maintain those relationships without policy. Because policy is made for us to like be able to lean upon in those hard times, and you get to back up your decision making. Like you know your business best, and you get to decide how things go. When it's written down, for some reason, it's just easier for people to follow.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's why we always encourage people with like your one-on-one client relationships, right? You need a contract and it's not that much different than what you start to expand. It's just that this one written constitution essentially applies to everybody within the business. And it's easier to sit down and say, look, so-and-so, this is the clause in our handbook that addresses maternity leave or dress code or like you can't have open-toed shoes, and this isn't me lecturing you, this is literally written here for your safety in the warehouse. You can't be wearing your flip-flops. It's not personal because that was your choice of the day. It's like, no, we follow the rules, and it's some things are really practical, like the dress code, and some things are more like maternity leave is more extensive, I guess, than like a practical day-to-day choice. But that can be really hard for people to come to grips with, I think, of like the element of doing something way before you need it. That doesn't
Yes.
come to us very naturally.
It doesn't. And when you're in the throes of things, like you don't think you have time to write a maternity policy because there's orders that need to get out, So just putting the legwork in up front, I think is so important. Like you said, making everything official, because then those conversations just go so much easier when you can say, hey there, you might not know this is in our policy, but you actually can't be wearing flip-flops in the warehouse versus calling them out, and it just feels personal. But when it's in the policy, it's the policy's fault, not my fault,
Yes.
even though you wrote it.
Yes, exactly. Because it's like past Katie might have written those policies, but they don't know that it was like past Katie. Someone said, whoever wrote this down said that you can't do this. When do you think you made like your first draft of that stuff? Like, did it just start with you sitting down in a Google Doc and being like, okay, I have to address these things? Did you consult with somebody else who gave you some guidance? What was the process?
Well, I think the beauty is it can be a rolling process, because like if you're shipping anything, like you have a return policy, like you start out with what you need and then it expands from there. So I think for us, maternity leave is the one that's on my mind. It was, again, nobody was pregnant, nobody was thinking about it, but someone we were hiring asked if we had one, and we were like, oh, we should make a policy, and so it's just things like that, like keeping your feelers open, because to sit down and come up with every single policy is going to take forever and be really hard. But if you can think of a few things, like if they've crossed your mind already, like, you know what, I should come up with a PTO policy or a request off work policy or maternity, like whatever has like crossed your mind is like, oh, I might need that soon. Do it now. Do those little ones, and then more and more will come up across your mind of things you'll need to do.
Yep. And then it all keeps building and all keeps adding up.
Yep.
And like, I mean, I know I changed my own contract a bunch of different times for client stuff because a different thing would come up. And it's like, it's not those same things that we're doing on a small scale can be applied to somewhat of a larger scale as well.
Well, I have another thought too. Something that was unique for us to think about, and maybe another reason that you might not be making policies right now, is that the rules, like government mandated rules about business, like pretty much don't apply to you if you're a privately held company and have less than 10 employees. Like you might think like it's illegal not to give maternity leave. And it is if you have 11 employees. It's really tempting to hear that and be like, oh, I don't even have to, give PTO or make this policy because we're too small. Let's do it when we have 11. But I think best advice would be like, the rules don't apply to you now, but act like they do. Because as things grow, it gets so hard to comply and like to implement those things. Because think about like, if you think you're busy now, picture what you're doing with triple the amount of people under you, it's only going to get harder.
Or it's better to have the policies implemented and each person who's brought on is introduced to those policies rather than you already have 9 people or 10 and you're like, guys, we're on the threshold here and we're going to be slamming, like hitting your desks with our employee handbook in the fall and you're going to have to go through and agree to everything.
And then everybody quits.
Yeah. And then everyone's like, well, you know what? Katie, I don't like what you wrote there. And like, I actually went through it's funny thinking about all of this because when I first moved to Georgia with Will, I worked in like a boutique real estate office for a year and I was listing homes. And she started hiring more employees and then she was coordinating with paychecks to do our payroll. And it was this whole thing. And one day she literally put the employee handbook on our desks. And she was like, this is like the new employee handbook that like everyone has to agree to. And that was kind of like my exact reaction. Like, well, what the heck is this? Yeah. Like you're just blindsiding me with this new handbook and expectation that I didn't know was going to be a thing.
No, you're exactly right. And we had to do that at some point. Like, I think we had like 2 or 3 employees and some of them weren't happy with things. And truly like all those employees that we had in the beginning are now gone. And we used to have policy issues with lots of people and lots of things, but it's because we were building them around those people. And now every single person that has come in when the policies were already set have stayed for years. It's people crave structure, and like you might think you're being nice by saying like unlimited PTO, ask ask coffee if you want, like, but people love structure in general. And just
Yep.
tell them the rules, and they'll work within what you give them. And if they don't like what you give them, they will leave.
That's exactly what sorry, I keep bringing up my dad, but like,
No, I love it. I like your dad.
I love my dad so much. I'll have to send him this episode to be like, Dad, you came up a lot in this episode. But the position that he's currently in with his company, they kind of had that whole conversation too about like unlimited time. And he basically said, oh, like that's the new hip thing to do.
Yeah.
But it actually doesn't set any expectation at all, because some people are like, well, can I actually use my time? Am I going to feel guilty when I take a week off?
For
Like,
sure you
is
will,
anyone
yeah.
else taking a week off? Like, what is everyone else doing? Like, it actually, everyone's just kind of like looking around to other people rather than looking at the policy, which very clearly lays out like sick time, paid time off, and all of that, and
Yeah.
how much they get. And so my dad has had people ask that question, and he has basically explained to them, like, here's the exact reason why we have this policy in place, why it is the way it is. We encourage you to take all of your time off possible, but this is why we don't have an unlimited policy.
Right. And if you're saying unlimited, like, you'd be bummed if an employee took off 16 weeks to go to
Right?
Europe, like, you don't really mean unlimited. Just say what you mean. If you mean 4 weeks, make it 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
and then just decide, like, what number would make me upset at an employee if they took, and then that's your number.
Yep, that's your
Less than
number.
that.
And he said it can be kind of like it's almost like a scummy like startup tech thing that people do, like in the tech industry especially. They'll say, oh, unlimited, because what they've figured out is that people will take off hardly anything, which at the end of the day is actually really like mean. That's not being very like gracious to your employees, because they do feel that amount of pressure. You could have that one crazy person who goes to Europe for 3 months.
Right.
Like, you never know.
You're right. No, studies show that. I mean, we had our employees vote, like, would you rather have it this way or this way? And everyone said, truly unanimously, they said, no, we want to know what we can take. And then we also at Hosanna have always done use it or lose it, to truly make them. It's like, we want you to go somewhere and rest or do a staycation, whatever. Like, but at the year mark of when they were hired, it resets. So we got to use it or lose it.
Yeah, and that's exactly the same way it is at Will's current company. We were just talking about it this morning too. He said, oh, we don't have a rollover, but I said, well, wouldn't you rather have the amount of days you have and have to use them rather than having less days that would like roll over? And he's like, yeah, you know what? I would rather have that.
Let's stay home.
Yeah, and he'll do exactly that. He'll just take a day off to be at home. It doesn't mean that you go on a trip somewhere or that you have to be on a plane or in your car. Like, you can literally be on your couch.
Right. That's good stuff. Man, I'm trying to think if I have any final thoughts on the policies, because it's so important.
Yeah.
It is.
Where are yours located? So if your employee wanted to go read their handbook, do you guys have a certain spot where all these files are accessible for employees?
Yeah, it's in a Google Drive. They can go take a look. And we have made amendments to it. And that is something I wanted to say. If you're starting like one by one, like with a vacation policy, or like you've got something already set up, that's great. Like, just keep doing the small things, because then when you do slap the handbook on their desks, you can confidently say, like, you guys already know most of this. I just added, one thing at the end about dress code. So make sure to give the page 14 a look. Like, it will just go down a lot easier if people are already aware of the policies that you're putting in place.
Yep. Completely makes sense. Okay, let's transfer a little bit to the personal side of things for you, because I would love to know what a current day-to-day looks like for you within Hosanna Revival now that the team has grown this much. Because 3 years ago, it was probably quite a bit different from what it is now. And obviously, you're like the original founder of the company. So it's not like your hands aren't in all the shipping things anymore. They're focused elsewhere. So what does your everyday look like?
Man, yeah, that's cool, because that's my like current goal for the year is kind of settling into this role that I have before me now. And that looks like the intersection of product design, which is what I started doing in the beginning and I plan to keep doing, and then intersecting that with marketing, which is what I studied in college, and something I also really love to do and manage. And then the third thing that I didn't plan on doing, which is managing a team.
Yep.
So I prioritize those three things, and am learning just a lot about where I am most gifted, and then what needs the most of my time, what serves my team well, and kind of really trying to balance those three things. But it's fascinating to me thinking about, I used to think it was crazy when a founder was not the CEO of their company. I'd be like, what the heck? You started it. Why wouldn't you want to be in charge?
Mm-hmm.
And then now I'm like, oh, it's because they're probably not gifted in management. You know?
Yeah, right.
that is something people are very good at and trained in. And if you are not, like, I totally see now why people hire a CEO they can trust to lead the company.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, like, we had to make that call of like, Katie, like, management isn't what you planned on, but you're doing okay and you seem to like it. Like, do you want to learn and grow in that area and keep leading the team? And for me, the answer is yes. So I'm spending more and more time learning how to lead. At this point on our team, we have, I think, 3 or 4 of our team members are middle managers. So they now have people under them.
Wow.
So I
gosh.
have, like,
yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah. So I have my team of people, or, the people that have been here longer that I manage, and I now equip them to go manage their, even like 1 or 2 people under them. So I'm learning a lot about that. And it takes a lot of the burden off, knowing I don't have to give 15 quarterly reviews. I can give 6.
Yes. And then they get to give like the rest of the quarterly reviews and so on and so forth. Okay, what's the total number of people then involved with Hosanna Revival at every level?
So we have, I think it's 12 people on salary, working on our upstairs team, just doing like business things. And then like I said, we have like 15 people in our shipping operation that kind of rotate in and out.
Okay. Wow. Oh my gosh. Almost 30.
It feels like a million. It really does.
Yeah, it can be so exciting, but difficult and challenging. And it's funny that once again I was cracking up because we were talking about the CEO thing. Mm-hmm. My dad was hired for that exact reason. He was
really?
like, yes, he had a company that he was involved with that was a startup. And so I think he had originally invested, became really good friends with the guys who had started it. And then eventually they came back to him and they were like, Dave, like, we need a CEO. We trust you. We know that you know what you're doing. That literally like happened to him.
Your dad's the man. This is so funny because last time when we met up in person, you're like, I really think you need to meet my dad.
I know.
Here we go again. I'm like, I gotta talk to this guy.
I know. And you know what? I was thinking about that because I was like, I know that I told her that, and then I don't think I ever made it happen. My follow-up on that was so bad. So I need to make sure that actually does happen this time. You probably would.
So funny.
You'd probably have so much fun talking to him, and he just loves stuff like this. Okay, let's see. Last question of the episode. There's been so many amazing gold nuggets throughout this entire thing. It's going to be really helpful for people, but what exciting things are happening for you and your team the remainder of the year? Any big goals, any big launches? I would love to hear.
Oh, yeah, that's good stuff. So we do have 3 new people joining our team in June, which we're really excited about. We always joke, like, when we've got new people coming on board, like, you clean up a little bit and you like hide your weirdness from them a little bit. and then slowly, as you get more comfortable, they fit into the culture. So we've never had 3 people start at once. We've had 2 people start on the same day one time, but I think the whole office is just excited for these new people. We've got a department expanding that's always been a silo that'll have a new coworker. Yeah, and then a whole new role we created. So we're excited. And then other than that, I think like refining our niche. We, for a while, were growing, trying out new products, seeing what worked. And now as we enter our 7th year, we feel like we know what works. And so we're able to pull back on like number of different products and maybe do more designs within a certain product, or even less products altogether. If we know what works, if it isn't broken, why fix it? You know how it goes.
I love that though. I love that because that's a thought that I've always had within my own business of like, what point do I want to grow it to? And at what point is it okay to maintain and continue successfully running your business as it is without maybe making an empire? Like, we don't have to build Rome. We don't have to. Like, if it is, if it's paying for itself, if it's paying for all your employees, if you're making a livable income that you're happy with and everyone is sustained, then it's like, you don't need to grow to the moon or whatever,
Well, and let me give a like concrete example, kind of what I'm talking about here and what we've
Okay.
seen, because I think it would have been really helpful for me to hear this a
Yes.
couple of years ago. So we, for some reason, I think maybe a lot of people in the creative industry are like this. If you're running like a collection based business where you're going to release new designs of whatever you make, it's like, okay, we need a new spring collection. So every spring, I better come up with X number of whatever. For me, that's Bibles. But like, we started finding out that, like, okay, wait a minute. The brown Bible with a flower on it that I released last year at this time is still our top performer. Like, why would I discontinue that and make a new brown Bible with a flower on it? Because obviously, it
Yeah.
works. So you think, like, oh, I'm going to make something like it just to keep your product offering fresh. For us, we were discontinuing products 1 year after we made them. That was just the model we were following, because we assumed people
Oh
only,
my
I don't know,
God.
they wanted freshness from us. Who knows? But for
It's
us,
true, because I've always heard that and I've always been like, but why? That's what I
but
always say.
why?
But
Who's telling us we
why?
have
Like,
to
why
discontinue?
always new? Why? I don't understand if people
Why?
are still buying it.
Oh my gosh, exactly. So that's kind of like a wonderful awakening for us to realize, like, okay, this is still a top performer. And if you think about it, like, okay, we bought 1,000 of these and sold through them. But if we've got 200,000 Instagram followers, surely we think there might be more people that would want to buy this than just
Mhm.
discontinuing it when it's sold out. So we've really tried to buy, knowing the cash flow that we have to work with, knowing like, okay, maybe let's buy more than 1,000 of a product and try and see if we can sell them for longer than a year. But yeah, it seems simple saying it now, but when you've never done it before, you get to learn things like that and
Yep.
realize like pretty simple truths. So yeah, we're refining, we're keeping products, we're trying to develop like a staple collection, stuff that stays
Mhm.
in stock over the years that everybody knows, like, oh, it just becomes like a house design that we've had for a while. And that's
Yeah.
okay that it's old.
Right, because even if somebody has bought it for themselves, they might love it so much that they buy it for their sister, mom, brother,
Yes.
friend, teacher. There's still like infinite possibilities,
Hmm.
They might want a second one, who knows, like of
Who
the same
knows?
design.
Right, it
They
gets
lost
stolen.
it. Yeah,
Yep.
something happens. They left it on the plane, like, who knows? So, yeah, I love that because I've always kind of been in the back of my mind, but why? Like,
Why?
why always new, everything always new when what people have is already so great. And you obviously have the whole side and the retail side, direct to consumer part of things. And that
Yeah.
could be, once again, a whole nother discussion for another time. It's just
Oh,
incredible
right.
that you're doing both of them, but they both look very different, for
Mhm.
sure. Are you guys on Fair?
We're not, and we actually will never be. We made that call a couple years ago. It's just not a good fit for us. We've got an
Yep.
in-house sales rep, and he's like, that would eliminate my job, and I've got time to dedicate to it. So
Yeah, and
it
they're
works
being
better for
paid,
us.
and then Fair doesn't
Yep.
get that commission and all of that. So
Right.
for you guys, that
Right.
makes complete sense.
And we considered, like, could we get on Fair, get the clients and leave? But Fair is like very clear that if you do that, they will sue you. So
Yes.
we're like, okay, good to know. We will not be doing that.
Mhm. Yep, that's probably the best idea in the long run for you guys since you have the capabilities in-house
Yes.
to do all of that outreach and everything more of the quote unquote old school way, but it still works because you guys have the capabilities. So I do realize that I think I misspoke at the beginning of the episode. I had told people, I was like, oh, this is going to come out in May. I lied. It's actually July. Oops.
Okay.
I was
July
checking
is
the
great.
calendar again, and like some of the dates had moved around and didn't get updated in our Google Doc. But I'm still so excited for this to come out and for everyone to hear it when it airs. I feel accomplished being that far ahead in terms of like
I
guest
know. Look at
interviews.
you. You're on it right now.
I'm trying. I'm hoping that like when Cami comes back to start recording with us again, then we don't have to also worry about recording guest episodes in there too. Like
Oh,
I'll have a few
nice.
more months of guest episodes done and hopefully that'll help. So we'll see. I miss you,
Yes. Future
Cami.
Elizabeth is going to be so grateful.
I know. I think future Elizabeth will
Future
be
you.
grateful. Well, Katie, thank you so much for sharing so much amazing knowledge with us on the back end of your business and what it has looked like in the past 3 years. It has grown so much. Can you tell our audience where to find you guys? Instagram, social media, website, all of that.
Yeah, man, we are on Instagram. That's our primary social media outlet right now, just at Hosanna Revival. But on our website, our email list is another great way to stay connected with us. We put a lot of time into our email design, oddly enough, to make that kind of a beautiful experience for our community too. So both those places are good. It really has been great talking to you. I'm encouraged. I love reminiscing on, the good old days. And it's fun when we have these conversations to realize like, wow, that was a really hard season a couple years ago,
Yeah.
but look at us now on top of it. So be
Yeah.
encouraged, everybody. It gets better.
Yes. Yeah, it does. It does get better and
With
you'll get
policies, only with policies.
exactly. With policies, with a little bit of planning, it can all go a really long way.
Right.
So, well, you guys, you know the drill. Please take a screenshot when you're listening to this episode. Make sure that you tag us at Biz Birthday Bash, tag Katie on her handle and Hosanna Revival as well, just to let us know that you guys are listening, and leave a rating and review if you have a moment in iTunes and you haven't done that yet. I think most of you have. I think the last review that we had written was like maybe in January or something at this point. But maybe we'll get a couple extra ones. If you guys
Yes.
are loving the content, please. And you guys can always go to our website, to our Q and Cake section of the website. It's at the very bottom in the footer if you want to submit questions for us. We would love to have those to answer them in the future. And Katie, you know what? Maybe in another 3 years, we'll have round 3. And who knows what will have changed at that point.
Oh my gosh. I love the sound of that. Thank you again. It was great having this awesome conversation.
Yes. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye, everyone.